a webinar organized by the Titan project. And the Titan project is about enabling transparency in food supply chains via the implementation of digital technologies to boost health, sustainability, and safety of products, processes, and diets. So, as you can understand, the Titan project has a broad range of topics that we are interested in and working on, and I will explain a little bit how this works. Today we have two eminent speakers. We are really proud to have them in this webinar. The first presenter will be Ryan Edwards from Barcelona, and he will be talking about transforming and innovating, let's say, successful businesses, communities, and teams in the agri-food industry. And then we have a second speaker, Rosaline Reymans, one of the first authors of this new report from the Food Systems Countdown initiative. And we are really looking forward to hear what she can tell us about this report and maybe also about the tools that are developed to make the connections insightful. We have a program where after my introduction, first Ryan will present, then Rosaline. We have a short Q&A session, and then we will split into two groups, one group with Ryan, one group with Rosaline, and we have made some questions to discuss, and then we come back to report on the outcomes. As I said, the Titan project has quite a broad range of topics that we are looking at, and we have divided them in four what we call key expertise areas. And the first one is to enable consumers to make informed food choices. And this has one side is more focused on food safety, food fraud, authenticity. And the other pillar here is to improve how we inform and educate the consumer. The second key expertise area we have in Titan is to facilitate supply chain sustainability. And this one pillar is environmental and social, and it's also related to ESG reporting. And the other one is more the economic support for SMEs, because we think they are an important driver for change. The third pillar is implementation of new innovative technologies, where we are looking on one hand into faster and more accurate detection methods, and on the other hand, and mainly in disruptive digital technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, Internet of Things. But today's webinar, and we organize a webinar every month, so every 4 months it will be about one key expertise area, is to take the food system approach, because this is something that we hear a lot about. We hear a lot about let's say, the balance between food security and sustainability. But we have defined two pillars for Titan, and that's one to move towards a sustainable food system, and the other one is about successful innovation. And in this webinar, I think Ryan will represent more successful innovation, and Rosaline will represent more how we can move towards a sustainable food system. This webinar is especially organized for what is now called the Titan Stakeholder Board. We will hopefully this month change the name into the Titan Network of Expertise, where we want to, let's say, collect a community or create a community of experts that can collaborate with each other, can exchange thoughts, can collaborate. What we offer when you become a member of this, and it's very easy to sign up for this community on the website of Titan. You join a vibrant community, you stay informed and contribute. We try, when we have new materials, to inform the stakeholder board first, before we inform, let's say, the general public. You can contribute when you think you have an idea or you have a proposal for someone that could give a webinar. Maybe you would like to give a presentation yourself, or you can contribute in any other way, let us know. You can expand your network. You will have early access to information and multimedia, and well, you can help to shape the future of our food system. As the Titan project, every 3 months we make a newsletter which contains items that are relevant for the Titan project. Here you see an example of an article that was published last summer of 4 pages, where we claim that we transform the food system for a sustainable future. And then the 2 news items where Titan was present at different fairs or presenting results. So Noelia from ASTI was presenting her results on Eurosense 2024, and Agrono, a partner of Titan, was presenting themselves at the Production and Processing Expo. We, together with the newsletter, we also share a PDF which contains a large list of scientific publications and I would call them policy reports that have been published in the past period, to share with you so that you have it at your disposal. Maybe when you write a paper yourself or a white paper or a blog, you can benefit from it. And personally, I think it's sometimes difficult to get hold of all these reports that are published by let's say, organizations in society. And yeah, I think for some of them, like FAO and WHO, you can go to the website and you can see it. But there are some organizations that are lesser well known, and still produce really nice reports. And then additionally, as a service, we publish the Titan Weekly, which is a weekly overview of news items that we found, let's say, in the newsletters we receive, or on LinkedIn. It's published on LinkedIn, usually every Tuesday at around noon. But because today it's the day of women in science, and we had a post about this, it will be published tomorrow around lunchtime. So look out for it. It contains a lot of nice information. Let's say it refers to one pagers that are easy to read on the key expertise area. So to help to the consumer to make informed food choices, to build sustainable supply chains, to implement new innovative technologies, and to follow the food system approach. And the next webinar will be for the key expertise area, facilitating supply chain sustainability. And we have planned to have presentations from Paul Behrens. He is a professor from Oxford on towards a livable planet. And we have invited Naomi Schaefer. She works now for a company, but before she was working at university, and she will speak about supply chain transparency and its connection to sustainability, which is of course really at the core of what we are looking at in Titan. That's it from my side. I'll stop sharing and then I'll give the floor to Ryan for his presentation.
Thank you. It's great to hear that, Edward. It's impactful. I've been hearing a lot about Titan from the outside, so to now actually be here and present and understand a bit more how you're operating is really exciting for me. It's the kind of work that we like to get involved in. So I'm going to share my screen and sort of spend 20 minutes just sort of giving an overview of what we do, what we've been learning, some insights, and I'll certainly spend the second half of this last 10 minutes giving real examples, because I think that really helps. What I'm talking about today is, as it says on the screen, transforming and innovating the agri-food industry by developing successful businesses, communities, and teams. And a little bit just quickly who's speaking with you. So I'm based in Spain, as Edward said, between Barcelona and Tenerife, actually. I am British, but been living here for the last 14 years. I spent 10 years of my career, firstly IBM and then Cargill, where I was the European head of innovation and marketing for one of the big business units there. If you don't know Cargill, they're a very large agricultural business. And I was helping run what was called the grains and oilseed supply chain business, part of the leadership team there. And in that journey, I learned a lot, I would say, about how agri-food works. Some things really impressive and innovative, and the challenges around trying to drive sustainable transformation, which is what led me 10 years ago to leaving Cargill and running a couple of agri-tech startups. And in that journey of the last 10 years, I've ended up developing Make Innovations, which I'm the CEO and co-founder of, where we try to empower fantastic talent who are interested in agriculture and food transformation to come together, no matter what their background is, to try to collaborate towards driving that transformative systems change. So on that journey, I've worked with lots of organizations, and we'll talk more about that. But why do we need to do this? Well, I think most of us are aware that there's huge challenges related to agriculture and food, which is driving, unfortunately, the climate crisis. It's also leading to an attack on biodiversity. We have major challenges there, but also food security. I've just got back from Thailand, actually, where I spent a very pleasant few weeks. I used to live over there, and going back and working with some government operatives in both Thailand and Singapore, it's become clear in that part of the world, Southeast Asia, that there's a massive challenge with just getting food security, ensuring that there's enough nutritional meals on plates, which most in Europe, we don't have that issue, but also helping smallholder farmers in driving prosperity for them. We know there's enough calories around the world in our food system to feed the planet. There's plenty of economics to actually make a just sharing of the value created, but that's not the case today. So there are many challenges, and that's why we believe in the power of ecosystems, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, to help us transform the system from one that has done us very well the last sort of 60, 70, 80 years, and now needs to transform for the current realities of the resource limitations that we face on the planet. What's blocking us from that, in our experience over the last 10 years, is there's a lot of good intention to drive impact. We see many startups out there in Europe are very good at creating technologies and IP, but actually getting to a level where it can scale, we're not doing very well at that. I'm going to bring real examples to this later in my talk. So how do we actually drive scalability of our impact, meaning bringing it to market? So it's true innovation. Because if it's not in market and not actually being sold and adopted, then for me, it's not innovation. It's idea, it's IP, it's invention, which are all really important things, but we've got to scale that. The way we've been doing innovation has been in the food industry from my experience, and I'll show you what that experience looks like in a moment. Very much focused on R&D, which again, super important, rather than how do we get external perspectives? How do we drive open innovation through an ecosystem? And then finally, which relates to both these points, is how do we actually transfer that knowledge into organizations that can scale it in the market? So this is what we've seen a lot of. Maybe it's recognizable to the people on this call. So for us, food system transformation, I'll just start with the circle on the right here and the outside of that in the blue. For us, we've got to bring together many different actors. That's why we talk about ecosystem. If we're really going to drive innovative transformation, we've got to engage with industry, with corporates, with governments at the different levels, regional, national, across the EU and beyond. Also communities. Who's been impacted by this, by the facilities that are growing, that are processing our food, or the people that live near to where we're growing our food, and communities in terms of the citizens that are consuming the food, all of us. How are we being impacted? How are we part of the conversation? We've got amazingly funded and world-class facilities across Europe in terms of research and technology. How are we properly engaging with them to actually design for the needs of the market? And of course, a lot of people put startups as a hero, as our saviors of technology. Again, super important, but we try not to put them at the center. And that's a big part of what this talk is how do we enable solutions around common challenges? And startups are one part of that. They can help us learn and disrupt. But it's not right if we try to put them as our saviors, as seems to have happened over the last 5 to 8 years in agri-food here in Europe. So yeah, ecosystems for us is very much about bringing different stakeholders, different actors with shared values around a common challenge and enabling them, empowering them to actually work together to come up with solutions. So how do we go about that? So it's really about understanding who are the businesses, the communities, as I said, bringing together these experts, policymakers, regulators, investors, research institutions to be able to actually influence one another in a safe space. So a little bit of an example of how the kind of organizations we work with. There's a lot of logos on the screen there. You can see they're grouped in different ways because we try to take our own medicine, right? We try to live by our own example and actually bring together very diverse stakeholders in an inclusive way around common challenges, which I'll come to those examples. When we talk about organizations, For us, the definition is it's a group of people, teams of people, with access to knowledge, with access to facilities, to assets, to capabilities. But it comes down to human beings. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of actually understanding the individuals and building teams around them. You can see on the left side that I'm going to talk in a moment about living labs, because for us, there are many formats, many vehicles, many programs you can create to enable this. And on our journey, Make Innovations, we've gone from running accelerators, incubators, venture studios, to actually now working more in an ecosystem format around shared agendas and living labs. And again, if some of this language is new to you or you want to ask more questions about it, we'll have a chance later or even offline. We can always explore what we're talking about. But for us, the journey that I've seen in my cargo days, but also with a lot of these organizations in the top right corner, so Danone, PepsiCo, Mondelez, Bayer, Bimbo, these are our current sort of partner organizations. They're going on this journey from left to right. So there's been, I mean, when I was leading innovation at Cargill, my KPIs were, is it viable? Can we make money? And is it feasible? Can we do it? If we tick those two boxes in our innovation funnel, then we're going to try and push them into the market. And I use that word push on purpose because often we weren't understanding what the market need was. And it was, let's invent, let's create IP, and then let's see if we can sell this. Where we've gone in the last 10 years in working with lots of startups is they're very strong at understanding the desirability, the need of the market. You might call this design thinking. So let's start with what the market actually needs and design around that by understanding and empathizing with the market, meaning bringing in different stakeholders and actors, listening to them, and then seeing if that market need, if we can, are the right organization to technologically and business-wise meet that need. And then where we've got on our journey is what we've created, Planet and People Design, is what we need to actually understand also the regenerative system, the circularity aspects, the nature that we're impacting in this journey. So on the far right, we're now finding beyond innovation, the transformative sweet spot, as I call it, that looks at all of these four elements. So it's really asking that question of, yes, you've got innovation, and I mean, he's going to come to the next talk after me, but should we do it? Yeah, we can sell this. Yes, we can make this. Yes, we can make money out of it, but is it the right thing to do? Are our resources on this planet set up for this? And I think that's a question we all need to be asking ourselves more often. And where we come out from that is, if we're building an ecosystem, then the starting point is on the human level. Let's actually understand what the market needs and then decide if we can do it. And that brings me to kind of recap where we're at before I dive into examples with you. So I was asked to talk about teams, which for us is talent, which is the foundation of everything we do. Bringing together diverse, skilled people with different backgrounds in an inclusive way and empowering them to work together. If we can do that, we can create businesses, we can create ventures, we can create different vehicles that can take a challenge and turn it into a solution. And if we do that well, then we can drive ecosystems of different organizations, different stakeholders together, which is where we also build communities. So you can see by the colors there how we think about teams, business, and communities as talent, venture, and ecosystems. And all moving that forward, that's led us to build these living labs around Europe. So as I said, I just got back from Southeast Asia, where we're also exploring positioning some living labs now. The living lab, if you're not familiar, is very much saying, well, how do we take a common challenge in a place, so territory, in a place-based innovation, and bring together the right stakeholders, as per the bottom of the screen, around that common challenge, but beginning with an industry need and actually always designing around that industry need. And we're now running 7 of these with our partners across Europe right now. And again, afterwards or in the breakouts, we can talk more about this if it's relevant. But we're finding this is a great way of ensuring that the research and development we're doing and creation of IP is already matching with the industry market needs. So when I talked earlier about that lack of scalable impact, this is one way we believe we can solve that. Bring in another example. So just to say, those living labs, happy to dive into the 7 of them. We've got lots of information, and we're starting to find that industry are starting to want to be part of that conversation. And another example that we're working on, or that we built back in 2023, is with Tetra Pak, so the largest food packaging organization out there. They came to us with the challenge of, how do we, beyond our own R&D, connect with startups? How do we find the most interesting technology solutions out there and make ourselves attractive to them? And what we created was, as it says at the top, Scale Up Ecosystem Accelerator. We said, you need to work at an ecosystem level. This is not about just accelerating startups with Tetra Pak to market, which is often what we've seen happening, is actually working with your value chain, working with your suppliers, with your clients, which in this case is retailers, to together understand the market needs and together understand, through our help, what the technology providers, the solution makers, the startup scale-ups that are out there that we can actually add value to and meet together. And the outcome of that has been, we've now launched into market, I believe, 6 scale-ups through this ecosystem. And the value of that, continuing the story here, is that you enable these emerging brands, startups, scale-ups, to actually, not by themselves, get access to a market, understand where the challenges are, take their team of people, and rather than having to go to investors and raise funds, which is typically the way scale-ups and startups try to scale their business, is saying, well, let's not focus so much on you raising money, because that's what stresses them out, and they spend all their time, and if they're not good at it, they don't succeed. And those startups that do succeed become very good at raising money. We need them to also be really good at understanding the market needs and develop their technology into one that can meet those. So what we try to say is, let's take away the need to raise so much money and give you access to an ecosystem where you have the expertise, where you have the co-manufacturing, where you have the brand marketing support, where you have the facilities to test and scale your technology, where you have the access to the market, in this case, the retailers. And also, you do have access to investors, so you still need that. But let's not focus everything on trying to pitch and raise capital. So this is a new model of bringing together teams, bringing together businesses, and building communities of practice to actually drive scalability of impact to the market. Another example, I've got 2 left, and then I'll hand over, is what we've called the Alt Protein Club. So on this one, we're very place-based. We've zoomed in on Catalonia. So whilst Nike Innovations operates globally, we try to also zoom in on different territories to enable innovation to happen there. So in this case, we saw that in Catalonia, the region of Spain, there's a lot of very innovative alternative protein startups. There's also, I think in Europe, the biggest pork producer by capita in Europe. So intensive animal livestock farming happening, very important economic driver for the region. But we know that protein diversification is happening and they're feeling threatened. There are challenges in that space. How do we take a region that is, as I say, very strong in pork production, and on a journey to say, well, you've got a lot of technologies happening, startups happening in alternative proteins, and marry these 2 things together? And what we created was, let's create a safe space. So I talked earlier about empowerment through bringing diverse actors together in an inclusive way, so they can have hard conversations and actually find a way of collaborating, which is what is an ecosystem. And this club method is one way of doing that, saying it's private, it's invite only the senior people of organizations are there, and we're all in a safe space where we're only going to agree what are the topics that we want to tackle together. The things that are IP, that are competitive secrets, will not bring to the table unless everybody else agrees and we sign a document. And we will actually look at these common challenges that usually we'd compete on, and actually we'll bring in associate members from the public space and also the corporate space with their expertise to enable these startups to actually work together rather than competing with one another around common challenges, which in this case they've discovered through this club 4 common challenges. One, again, is market access. So how do we get to the consumers? How do we educate consumers? 2, as usual, is access to finance. How do we do that in a common way? 3 is access to facilities. And it turns out in Catalonia, there's amazing facilities, laboratories, test kitchens, and so on, that are actually underutilized. So we're marrying these two things together. And 4 is influencing regulations and policies, or at least being understanding and aware from experts in those spaces of what policies and regulations are coming that are going to impact this sector. So by understanding the needs of all these individuals and where the commonalities are, we can build communities of practice in a safe space for them to actually work together to have a leverage their impact and scale it. And then the final example I want to give is a ecosystem venture builder we created with EIT Food. Some of you may be familiar with this. It's been going 4 years now, called Team Up. And this was a mission that we said, especially in southern Eastern Europe, there's a need to bridge the gap between technological development, IP, with business know-how. This was not happening very well, we saw 4 or 5 years ago. And the goal was to create 15 new agri-food startups focused on impact, sustainable impact every year by pairing these technologists, researchers, scientists with experienced entrepreneurs. And sorry for the fuzziness of the slide, but to do that, we said, again, let's do an ecosystem. Let's bring in challenge owners, in this case at the bottom of the slide, the corporates, who can tell us strategically what they're focused on, so we can connect that right back to the technology creators and match those two things. And the way we did that, if you focus on the right side of this slide, is indeed we ended up launching, we actually launched 22 startups in the first year, I think 24 in the second year, and it's continued in that vein. But we have a lot of interest from the market, and this is just Southern East Europe at this stage. So there's a lot of people who want to be on these programs, they want to drive impact, and they recognize that actually, maybe as a technologist, I shouldn't be the CEO of a company. Maybe I should be the CTO. I need a business person to actually help me drive this. And you know what? I don't want to do this alone. I want access to an ecosystem which EIT Food and Naked Innovations provides them. I'll just speed up a little bit for this last piece. This is something that's live. All of the things I'm showing you are live. So if they're interesting, again, we can talk more about it. I can send you the links. There are many, I guess the piece I want to, I wanted to come here. The message I want to give is, by bringing together these diverse skill sets, these diverse perspectives, which represent the whole food industry, we can create better. And we feel that through an ecosystem approach is the way to drive that scalable impact. These programs, as I say, are live. We're building more, and we can talk more about those in the breakout. But I think you see here that there are many vehicles, many models and methodologies to do this, but it all comes back to bringing together great talent who are passionate and knowledgeable in a diverse way. So I'll close with that. And I thank you again to Titan and Edward for the opportunity to share. I look forward to speaking with you all afterwards.
Okay, thank you very much, Ryan. We have the approach that we first have the 2 presentations and then we have a short Q&A session. So everybody is invited to save their questions or to put them in the Q&A or the chat. And then we will come back to this after Rosaline has finished her presentation. So please take the floor.
Okay, thanks very much. And yeah, it's really a pleasure to be here and also to be here in the same webinar as Ryan and to listen to him, as I think they're very complementary, and it's kind of building even the ecosystem in this with bringing the entrepreneurs and more the research side together. So yeah, I'll share my screen. Hopefully this works. Yeah, can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to be here on behalf of the Food Systems Countdown Initiative, and we'll give you insights in this, and also here all questions and comments and inputs are very welcome along the way. I'm doing this on behalf of a large group, and the co-chair organizations are the FAO, GAIN, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, Columbia Climate School, and Cornell. But I'll come later to the full team. Now, why are we actually doing this, and how did this came about? Well, Ryan already mentioned the urgent call and increased urgent call for food systems transformation. I think we all realize that we are all dependent on our food systems, but that food systems are facing and are contributing to immense challenges. Malnutrition, but also job challenges related to food system inequality, and also the huge environmental burden of food systems that threatens our planetary health or climate systems, and that food systems themselves are also very dependent on. Also, across the SDGs, food systems contribute through almost all of them, directly or indirectly. And the global attention on food systems has been increasing and has further been accelerated by the Food Systems Summit in 2021. And this has also catalyzed food system transformation pathways, where different countries, but also subnational groups came together to develop transformation pathways. And I think these pathways also provide kind of a great platform, as many of these SMEs contribute to different parts of these transformation pathways and connect with each other in some of these pathways. Or there is also demand, of course, for innovation to contribute to these pathways. And so at this moment, 127 countries have developed these pathways, crossing different sectors and different action tracks. And are also linking finance. 40% are linking finance to these pathways. Now, but when these pathways were developed and when there was this kind of increased boost on food systems globally, there was actually no monitoring system that was agreed upon. What are we actually talking about when we say food systems transformation, and how can we monitor and support progress along these paths? And the SDG framework was kind of considered, but it was felt that it was insufficient to really guide the transformation of a food system with these many linkages in the system, and this kind of particular need for a food system approach. And so. And at the same time, there was kind of there is this demand for more evidence-based decision making, and based on data and indicators. And there are so many indicators and data, but how do they actually come together in a food systems framework? So this led to this demand for a multi-sectoral, multi-scale indicator framework to monitor food system change and transformation, building as much as possible on existing data, on existing indicators that are there, but bringing them together more in a systems approach and making them more accessible and available for different types of decision making and different users. So this is how the Food Systems Countdown Initiative came about to help fill this gap. And it's really an interdisciplinary, multi-institution scientific partnership to monitor trends at global level as well as national and subnational level, more as well, of meeting the SDGs and other global goals. So the contribution of food systems and how they are changing along the way. You see here kind of this group of more than 16 members, really from very different disciplines and from very different organizations and places around the world. Now, the specific objectives are really to provide actionable evidence to track progress and guide decisions for transformation, to complement other monitoring and tracking initiatives, and to contribute to advancing the science as well of food systems and their transformation. And here is where the plan is. So this is a plan towards 2030, but it also plans to go beyond, is to go in different stages of monitoring and assessing and pushing also these frontiers of food system science, where first a framework has been developed and an indicator selection, and there is kind of a more or less annual publication every year that that helps give an insight in where are we moving towards with our food system, and also the overall framework can hopefully also support the different actors along the way. So it's mainly at national level that the data are brought together, but the idea is that it also supports the systems thinking and the different types of indicators and transformation that are part of the system. So now we are here. We just brought out our report on monitoring progress and navigating interactions that we worked on in 2024 and just came out in January 2025 as a policy report and as a paper. And I'll give some insights along the way, but also from some of the previous parts and how we came to this. So this is the working framework, and this probably looks terrible from your side, but it brings different components of the food system together, and it builds upon the high-level panel of expert framework and helps to really bring indicators and data together from across different sectors and how they link in the food systems approach. So you see here kind of the drivers, the components of food system, what happens and the outcomes, and then also the feedback loops and some cross-cutting elements. Based on that kind of an indicator architecture was developed with 5 teams. These are the teams: governance, diets, nutrition and health, environment, natural resources and production, livelihoods, poverty and equity, and resilience. And then you have different indicator domains here. So a first step was like, what do we really need to measure in these different parts, and what type of transformation is needed, is being demanded for, and where are we going? And this is an example for some of the environmental indicators where you really see kind of the bending of the curve that is needed for many of these indicators, where also the term transformation further comes in, so that it's really a bending of the curve for many of the indicators that we are aiming for. Now, that said, then it was still quite a process to go through what is available already, what can we use, and where is there a level of consensus also about what is useful from different stakeholders' perspective. So we did kind of an identification process of availability and also what data are already available. Because you can have a fantastic wish list, but then that was kind of a balance, and it's still a bit a balance of some things that we would really need to be measured, but they are not there yet, and then making the best of what is there already. So there was a screening done of feasibility, coverage, transparent methodology, and then also a consultation with a diverse set of stakeholders around the world, different regional stakeholder processes, to come then to a selection of 50 indicators that we work with and that represent different parts of that food systems framework to be able to monitor key parts where change, transformation is needed. Now that led then to the first status of, or kind of baseline, if you want to call it like that, of global food systems. That was the first papers, and our papers are coming out always together with food, a bit more policy report, and then you have the scientific paper. And here, this is kind of an overview of these 50 indicators in these different teams, and where they were like for that first point in time based on the data available. And here they were kind of categorized based on income level of the countries because it came clearly out that okay, it's beyond this income level. So we are talking about issues that cut across income levels, and of course there are trends depending of income level, but it's a global issue that we are talking about. And you can explore the indicators also on the website. So here there's more information about all the indicators and where the data are coming from. You can see the data. As well as then on the food systems dashboard, you have country profiles. So you can here go down the country data, and then you have country profiles where you can click on a country. Let's say we are here in France, for example, and then you can see for France all the different data. Like France is a yellow, I think, and yeah, and then compared to the region and to the world for the different indicators and where they sit. So you can have kind of a quite quick glimpse in the country profile. And for example, with if you're working as an SME in a certain setting, you can see what kind of indicators am I contributing to, or in what type of context am I operating here. Yeah, and then so this was kind of the first baseline, and this was also to really bring these indicators together, and that we look at patterns with this group of indicators rather than focusing on one specific team or specific indicators. Then in this paper that now came out in January, we looked at the trends over the years from 2000 to 2022 for 42 indicators for which we had decent trend data. And here you see kind of the average change for these indicators, and you see that 20 out of 42 are moving in a desirable direction. Of course, sometimes there is discussion about what desirable is, also depending of the context. But this was kind of, of course, you need to see them also as a package together. And then 7 indicators were trend undesirable, and the rest were shown no change, which is also considered undesirable. So there is some change happening, but if you take the overall picture together, it's still very slow, and the real kind of bigger, deeper transformation is not yet visible here. So there are some positive indications, but it seems still quite slow, and then and some are changing also in the wrong direction as well. Then it becomes also really interesting when you delve a bit deeper into the regional trends. And for some, you see that there are similar regional trends around the world. For example, this cost of a healthy diet, which linked to the inflation that is going up around the world, while some others, for example, food insecurity or food yield or pesticide use, for example, you see it going up in some regions. For example, this is Latin America and the Caribbean, while going down in others. This is Eastern Asia, for example. And all these data are also available at this regional level, so you can explore those as well deeper, depending of the context that you're interested in. Now, we also looked at, okay, change of one indicator can have direct or indirect impact on other indicators, or the lack of change of one indicator can limit the change of the other indicators. And that's where really the systems approach come in, of how are these indicators connected with each other, and how can we navigate some of these interactions, or start to navigate them, to better anticipate trade-offs and synergies that often in the past, by focusing on maximizing one or the other, have kind of led to very big unintended consequences. And here it's kind of a big balance between what can we do already with the data, and how can we complement this with the knowledge that is there on systems, on existing studies, more also the qualitative knowledge, the logical, theoretical knowledge. How can we bring that together? So here we did kind of an effort to help map out these interactions, because we think that understanding these interactions can help anticipate and manage these trade-offs and synergies better, and highlights also entry points for systemic change and for decision making. So we did this through an expert elicitation with the broad group of food systems compounds authors, complemented with an automated literature search, and also with 3 country illustrative case studies in Mexico, Ethiopia, and the Netherlands, with country expert panels to look a bit deeper into certain interactions in a context. So this also is kind of a graph that maybe looks very difficult to dive into, but it shows actually where some of the direct connections are, where some of the indirect connections are via one indicator, via 2 indicators, and where there are less connections. And it's not, we did this in a way to really focus on where some of the patterns of these interactions, and where do we really how can we use this to help navigate investing in certain areas. So one thing is that you see there are many interdependencies, which is expected, of course, in a systems approach. But it again emphasizes that when we look at this list of indicators, they are very much connected, and they tell a story together. They tell a narrative together. So when we look at these country profiles, it's really important to look at them together and to draw connections and connect dots between them based on the knowledge and expertise there. Then we see that 1/3 of the interactions occur across different teams, so that it's really important to have also these dialogues, these exchanges between these different teams, and connect dots, and that it's kind of a starting point to further build cross-sectoral collaborations. And we also see that governance and resilience show the largest numbers of connections to other teams, and are important entry points to help manage the connections and how the system comes together. You can also look at which indicators are highly connected, because change in these indicators could have broad impact on others, and or require multiple coordinated actions from others, so are dependent of many others. And so you see some that kind of stand out, that have many connections. For example, civil society participation is kind of contributing to many different other indicators in the system. Also, food price volatility is contributing, is influencing many others, but is also influenced by many others. Also, reduced coping strategies and cannot afford a healthy diet. You can actually see, you can explore them more if they are on rows or columns. I will not go into too much detail, but it's plotted like this, that the rows that are highly connected across columns show where changes in these indicators could have show where changes in indicators could have broad impacts on others. So these indicators, they impact many other indicators, because it goes from this direction to there. While the other way, this way, is these indicators are impacted by many others. So they require a lot of coordinated actions across the food system. Like, for example, affordability of diets, but also food price volatility. Well, food price volatility sits also here. Now, without going into detail in this, I just invite you also to explore this further. You can explore it. We made kind of an interactive graph here on the dashboard, where you can kind of go indicator by indicator to see certain connections here across different teams. So I'll not go into the technical content further here, but this is one of these interactive tools that are available on the dashboard. We also looked at kind of the available literature, particularly then we delved a bit more into the governance indicators, as this came out as the very connected team. And explored where gaps of research are, or literature are, and where there is already quite a lot of literature available on these interactions. Then we went also into 3 country cases, where we looked particularly at, in these country settings, how do these interactions for governance related indicators, how have they changed over these past 10 years, and how relevant are they considered for food system transformation pathways in countries where there are food system transformation pathways available, or for strategies in the country context towards sustainable food systems. And this is, and we did this for Ethiopia, Mexico, and the Netherlands. And you kind of would see that in Ethiopia and Mexico, most interactions were deemed very highly relevant to achieve national transformation goals. Well, in the Netherlands, because some of the governance indicators captured kind of the institutional structure and stability, they captured less kind of the individual political leadership, or kind of one thing that is missing a bit in these governance indicators is also the influence of industry lobbying, and how this can influence change, and so, but through these discussions, these type of patterns or barriers for change came up. For example, also in Mexico, these health-related food environment policies are really increasingly having an effect on diet and nutrition outcomes, and also on the market, on some of the market and livelihood indicators. These as examples, but it was also through more than using these tools and moving the dialogue of what do these interactions actually mean in this context, that certain barriers for change or certain enablers for change came up depending of the context. And then here, these are just some conclusions at this point, that while we need critical change, there are some indications of positive change. So some parts of the food systems are moving in a desirable directions, and interactions illustrate where there are potential upstream dependencies that might be blocking potential change. Also where there are opportunities for more kind of systems change entry points, and where resilience and governance indicators are also identified to have broad influence across the food system, and that by bringing different actors together, this can kind of contribute also to how governance and resilience is being approached. And then diet and resilience indicators have many influences, suggesting need for coordinated action. So they are influenced by many indicators. And yeah, these are some kind of things that are coming out from in the discussion and being further discussed in the paper, but also when you explore yourself the interactions and the trends, the changes, you can find things that are relevant in your particular context. We also see that there are, of course, still critical data gaps exist to measure food systems that and sometimes they are available in some regions or in some countries, but not globally sufficiently to take them up in this type of global analysis. For example, the true cost of food loss and waste is a big gap. Also, workers and worker welfare. Productivity beyond kind of yield, productivity along the food system, policy coherence for transformation, budgetary allocation, and food safety. And so the Food Systems Countdown Initiative continues, and now at the moment we are working on more a country-level performance assessment, where different values are more considered compared to certain targets that are being set. So and it's open also for different collaborations and networks, and to learn of how these type of monitoring efforts can also be useful from your perspective. So it's of course a big collaboration with many different players, and thank you very much also on behalf of Kate, who is the first author of the latest reports. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It was an impressive presentation. I think we have now been bombarded with a lot of information. Let's see if there are questions in the audience. We can have some time. I think there was one question in the Q&A from Muhammad Haris. A question to Ryan: does these ecosystems also help innovation in aquaculture and the fisheries sector?
You're muted.
I think you're mute, yeah.
Can you hear me? No.
Yes, now we can hear you, yes.
All right, let's try this way. Seems these aren't working. Excuse me. The short answer is yes. I actually worked a few years in my cargo days with aquaculture. Don't know if it was sustainable, to be honest, in those days, but with EVOS, Skretting, and Utreco. But so we work closely with an organization called Hatch Blue, where we're building ecosystems. So they work out of Norway, Hawaii, and Singapore. And we're building ecosystems between the fish feed producers and startups that are trying to revalorize waste not waste, but revalorize byproducts, out of that system that can either stay within the fish feed, or sometimes it's going into pet food as well. So the short answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have another question for you, Ryan. But please, people in the audience, when you have a question, raise your hand or let us know. So you mentioned at a certain moment that when you were working for cargo, they were interested in two aspects. Is it viable? Is it feasible? And then later on, you mentioned as an additional criterion, does it help in relation to sustainability? And well, then maybe in relation to the presentation of Rosaline, it's nice to know what criteria do have for when does it bring any good to society? Because that is the question that you're having. Well, how do you determine this?
I mean, Rosaline, please build or add on what I'm going to say. For us, it was always on a project by project basis. So there was an overall metric that we were trying to achieve in terms of, it was very much around reduction of energy uses, better stewardship of water, and prosperity for all, which meant usually smallholder farmers in that context. However, then depending on the specific innovation that we're, or in IP or market challenge we're looking at, we would then tailor the KPIs, the metrics that we're measuring for that. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't know, Rosaline, if you want to add something.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see indeed how you go about that, and maybe how we could potentially collaborate to see to help anticipate maybe some of these unintended consequences for other indicators that might be there, because I think that's a bit the story we want to tell also with the set of indicators. It's not that you then always need to measure, of course, all of those, and they are also more at national level, but for some they might be based on previous experiences and based on logic models, really unintended consequences that might come, particularly when you go to a certain scale. And we actually work also with some innovation challenges where we do then some visioning and then some backcasting and ask about what can be some of the unintended consequences for different teams of that we also use in the food systems countdown. So that might maybe be something to discuss, or maybe you do that already, but I think that's how we think we want to inspire a bit with the countdown by anticipating some of these interactions, particularly when things go to scale, because that's often when more of the trade-offs happen.
Okay, thank you. Ryan?
Yeah, Rosaline, that's fantastic. And I would certainly like to follow up with you after today. My answer was related to my Cargill experience. In the ecosystem approach that we take now, we actually need a lot more help in this stage, because we're trying to empathize with all of the key stakeholders around a common challenge. And as you're saying, they have different motivations, different needs, and often these things don't all align, right? But we're trying to find some commonality where they will. But I don't know if winners and losers or pros and cons happen, and how we can actually shine a light on that at the start of the work and then measure it throughout is something that's certainly what we're looking to improve. But I think certainly one of the things that has helped for ecosystems is, rather than having one large organization sort of driving that this is what we're going to measure, this is what we're going to build, and really it's because we want to scale this in market, we're able now at least to have empathize with all the voices around the table to understand, as I say, their motivations and their challenges. So yes, it'd be interesting to understand it from the countdown perspective and how that can help.
Okay, thank you very much. I see something at the Q&A. Lisa van den Bossen has a question to Rosaline. Was the influence of political measures higher or lower in the Netherlands versus Mexico? And she also says impressive and very valuable data source, by the way.
Thank you very much. So if I understand the question right, it is what was the influence, was the political influence lower or higher in the Netherlands versus Mexico?
Yes, yeah.
We didn't really compare that. I mean, the process with the experts in the countries was qualitative. So it was where they ranked how different governance indicators impacted the other ones. So it's a bit difficult to answer that question. But what I can maybe say, a trend that came up was that in the Netherlands, the expert mentioned particularly that they saw the influence of governance on the food system actually diminishing and civil society stepping up much more. While in Mexico, the expert more mentioned that there was still there seemed to be much more kind of governance-driven change, while in the Netherlands, the government-driven change seemed to have stalled a bit based on these conversations. I don't know if that answers your question, Lisa, but we didn't really compare kind of how much one was compared to the other. We captured qualitative trends of how the experts saw certain interactions in their setting.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mohammed Haris has a related question, and he asks, how much influence does the international relations between countries impact these food systems interaction? And then he adds, also being specific, under the current political changes in the US, how much influence the global food systems can potentially have within the current scenario?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, I think. And it's also a question that has come up that needs to be investigated more. But we haven't really taken up the data for that. We did have discussions that on trade and on globalization, that also through the globalization, governments feel they have less power on how the food system in a country setting moves one way or the other. But then that trade is being discussed a lot in the food system context, as you also know, probably in different ways, like how can trade and these international trade relationships be more used for sustainable transformation for food systems rather than exporting some of the trade-offs as is now being felt. Also, if you look, for example, at the Netherlands, at their what's this index again? It slips my mind now. Then you see actually that some of the environmental trade-offs are being exported, or some of the social trade-offs are exported to another country, but capturing that sufficiently is quite difficult, and has come up as something that we would need to do better.
Okay, thank you very much.